Retired life is great. I just got back to Nebraska in June. My family loves being back. My two old boys are going to Northwestern and so been really uneventful so far. Just trying to put a farm together and just enjoying the good life.
I feel you on that. I've been out obviously with an injury this year, but it's been nice to be back. This is the first fall I've ever experienced outside of football, and it's weird. It is weird. It's weird watching the games on Saturday. It's weird watching the games on Sunday. How is that adjustment? Because I know I've struggled with it. It's been something that's been tough for me, kind of not being on the field on a Sunday. What was that first year, that first Sunday when you were out of the NFL and you were watching it from home going, this is different? What was that like for you?
It's kind of hard to explain because, like you alluded to, this is all we've ever done. And for the last 23 years of my life, this is all I've done. For the last 15 years of my life has been reporting at training camp every July. When September comes, we're getting ready to battle. So now.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that. But the nice thing is we've got to come home. We've got to watch the Huskers play. So what are your thoughts so far? We're 5 games in, 3-2. Lots of questions, especially for the O-line, but I will get to that here later on. But initial overall impression of this Huskers 2019 team so far this season?
Well, I guess that kind of songs.
Yeah.
We were kind of talking about this before the show. Nebraska fan base has always had extremely high expectations. And I think we start to forget about what the reality is in the organization right now. Frost and his staff are trying to dig out of a really deep hole. So I think, we start to, over the spring and summer, we start to have unrealistic expectations start to come about, and I think last week kind of brought us back to reality a little bit.
Touch on that a little bit more, because I know from my point of view, obviously I drink the Kool-Aid every year. I do. I think, Huskers are going to be back on the national stage, but Scott Frost made his first rebuild look so easy. I mean, he's in UCF. He's not playing the Ohio States of the world, who in my opinion is one of the better teams in the country this year. But a lot of guys are starting to call for heads like of Adrian, of Cam Jurgens, of these young guys. And I think that's just part of the rebuilding process. When you have a young guy like Adrian or Cam Jurgens, there's going to be struggles. But those are who you build off of. You played as a young guy. You played as a true freshman. I played as a redshirt freshman. It's hard. I mean, you're going against guys when you're 18 years old that are 20, 22 grown men. So tell me where you think Cam Jurgens is head at as a center, as a true freshman who played tight end, who's never really been in the bullets like that. Where is his head at through Game 5 here with the snap issues and everyone kind of on the outside?
Yeah. Well, I'll say I had the pleasure to meet him a couple days ago, and I really enjoyed the interaction with him. I think it kind of made me feel a little bit better about things. Whereas before meeting him, I gotta be honest, I was pretty down on the guy. Even though he's a hometown kid, a homegrown kid, I've watched all the games, and there have been times when as soon as the snap happens, I just hang my head and just like, oh man, come on. But the ceiling is extremely high for this kid, and I'm pretty sure what Frost and the organization is doing, because they are in a rebuild. They're going, you know what? There's gonna be problems. Let's let him get out there, bloody his fist, bloody his nose. It'll make him better on the back end, and we are gonna have a every year all Big Ten kid by the time it's all said and done, and he will be the staple guy on that O-line in a couple years, and it'll be great.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. We got to roll with the ups and downs of a young kid. It's not as easy as everyone thinks, just the progression, especially as a true freshman. This kid's 17, 19 years old. So let's flip sides. Let's go to the defensive line a little bit. I mean, I know as an offensive lineman, you watch a lot of the defensive line. You got the Davis brothers, Khalil being suspended this week. But Darian Daniels, I thought, was a really bright spot for this defense up to this point. And I think our front seven, I think, is very strong. What have you seen from the front seven of this Nebraska defense that's really been able to propel us through this first 5 games?
Yeah, that's really been a surprise. I don't know a lot of the guys' name on the defensive side of the ball, but I know that expectations were pretty low for the defense coming into the year. And aside from last week, I thought that they have overachieved or maybe exceeded a lot of people's expectations, which has been really nice.
Do you think that's because of scheme, or do you think that's because players are just playing at a different speed? Because when I watch this defense, I see a different speed from what I've seen the last few years from the Black Shirts D. I mean, they're flying to the ball, they're rolling. But is that scheme, or is that just players buying in and just rolling?
Well, I think it's a combination of both. Another year of Frost's staff scheme in, I think is huge. Guys understand better, but also Coach Duvall, the strength coach, another year being able to build these guys into bigger, stronger athletes. I think you always see the dividends of that kind of being paid on the defensive side first. Just because that's such an athletic side of the ball. So with him and his strength staff, I think that's what's kind of being caught up there on the defensive side.
Yeah, and I mean, you got to think this is only year 2 of that strength staff. When they came in, they switched everything. You were part of a switch from Callahan to Pelini when Pelini came here. You were part of that. How hard is it for, a senior class, maybe even a junior class that's been through 2 coaching changes, and they're going in and to really buy into the strength and conditioning piece to it, because that is so important. You spend more time with those guys than you do the actual coaches. How hard was that as a player to really come in and switch mindsets, really? Because each strength coach had its own wrinkle, right? Dobson was probably way different than the guy you had. I'm sure Duvall was much different than Mark Phillip. How hard was that for you as a player, and how hard do you think it is for these guys as players to make that switch just in the weight room alone?
Oh, it is huge, but I think it is totally dependent on the player. The player has to buy in with all his heart, because like you said, they are spending more time with that coach than any other coach on the staff, and a player has to decide when they're going to buy in. And you can already see this team is getting bigger and faster day in, day out, and it's really exciting to see.
I'd agree with you. I think that they're getting much better. Let's move back to the offensive line. These 2 tackles that we have, I thought have been playing fairly well. They went against a buzzsaw last week, which was Chase Young. He's arguably the best defensive player in the Big Ten. I thought Farniak struggled to touch. I thought Hymas played decent against him. But these 2 tackles are juniors. They got a lot of growth. They got a lot of potential. What are your thoughts on the tackle play so far? Because I know you had some good tackles that you played with, and I'm a firm believer. Joe DeSandris, who was a coach for me at San Diego, said you can't win championships without championship tackles. Does Nebraska have that in Farniak and Hymas, and do you think they can really make that next jump to become elite players in the Big Ten?
I think that they can. They do have the ability. I will say I've been thus far underwhelmed, to kind of contrast what you were saying. The first three years I was here, I was a tackle here, and I was with Leiden Murtha and Carl Nix. And we were kind of the tackle group. So I've been a bit underwhelmed at their physicality. I want to see more physicality out of them, because I know that they have it. They're big, strong guys that really move well. They got really good sets, but when they get their hands on the guys, then they got to really start bowing up some.
Yeah, and I would agree with you. Let's move inside. You played guard in the NFL and center for a long time. we got Trent Hickson and Bo Wilson, both who I think have played pretty solid to this point. I think Hickson being a young player, he's my most improved player from the beginning to the end. I thought that he's gone really, really well. The first game, he was all over the map. I mean, you watch him, he's on the ground, but I remember my first game, it was a nightmare as well. But talk about these inside two guys. They've been staples for us. I mean, they're holding the depth of the pocket, I thought, pretty well. But what are your thoughts on the two Husker guards so far this season?
Yeah, I will be honest, I'm a huge fan of this Bo Wilson kid.
He reminds me of you when he plays. He's like slow, kind of methodical, kind of just like in the right spot. Like when I watch him play, I'm like, that reminds me a little bit of Matt.
Yeah, he is your quintessential, and Bo, if you listen to this, I apologize, but the quintessential unathletic guy, because that is me. That is me. You just start to understand the game a little bit differently, so you put yourself in the right spots where you can move slow and then just try to tear people's faces off. And I see him do it, and I really enjoy it.
Yeah, I thought Bo's played very well up to this point. Let's switch to the run game. It's been very hit or miss for Nebraska. I call it the feast or famine. We're either ripping off the 75-yarders or we're getting -2, +2, and then punting on 4th down. So what can this team do? And first of all, did you enjoy the I/wing T formation that we threw in last week against Ohio State? I was standing up on top of West Stadium screaming because I was so excited. What were your thoughts when you walked out there and A, saw Adrian under center, and then B, a fullback in the game, which we haven't seen under Coach Frost?
Yeah, it was great. Kind of a salute to the old ways. It was really good to see. I will say, as far as the success of the running game goes, you do expect more out of this wide open spread, because the whole objective of the spread is to spread them out so you can run, and you purposefully are getting guys out of the box, and then you're not blocking a guy. But when I watch the games, I'm seeing more guys unblocked than are supposed to be.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that. I'm seeing free runners, right? And that's the thing that kills a run game. When you always hear, every coach I've ever heard from the beginning of time is a hat for a hat in the run game, and then the depth and the width of the pocket in the pass game, which we haven't had much of both. I thought that Adrian's been getting some pressure, some free runners, and I don't necessarily know if that's as much scheme or if that's as much with the fact that we're just getting beat up front. I know Ohio State decided they wanted to pressure the heck out of us.
Yeah,
I mean,
I will say with Martinez, there's been a couple glimpses where he shows a lack of understanding as well. When teams do bring the pressure, you see the offensive line make the adjustment to squeeze down to pick up an A-gap guy. He almost seems surprised that a D end is coming screaming into his face, and that is an unacceptable mistake. He needs to get caught up fast. So,
even as a young guy.
Even as a young guy, as a quarterback, you got to understand when an offensive line is squeezing to take an A-gap blitzer away, you know the D end's free, which means you got to get the ball out now, or you got to be on your wheels now.
Yeah, and I agree with you. There's some things, but the other part is, how important is it to keep a quarterback clean early in the game? I mean, it's so important because quarterbacks they need rhythms, they need the 1-2-3 ball out, they need the 5-step, they need to know that they're protected up front. And I think a pattern's been the quarterback hasn't felt comfortable, and Scott touched on it in his presser this week. He said, we need to make sure Adrian's ready for what he's seeing, meaning he's not worried about the snap, he's not worried about where the free runner's coming from, and he's worried about the receivers in the right spot. Everyone kind of took that two different ways. I took that as he's challenging those guys versus kind of a downgrade on the center, wide receivers, and O-line.
Oh, yeah.
Do you think that he is really challenging these guys, saying, hey, a lot of pressure is falling on Adrian, we need to help him?
Yeah, but I 100% agree with you. The challenge laid at the O-line's feet, I think is really important. And he needs to do that with those guys. But I see a lot of defenses are bringing the cover 1 and cover 0 blitzes, which means there's going to be guys free. It's going to happen. So I would like to see a little bit better understanding out of Adrian getting that ball out.
Absolutely. We're going to go. We have a question here that says, what's your best piece of advice to players to help keep their morale up? I mean, last week was frustrating. There's no way about it. I've been part of those losses. You've been part of those losses. It stings. But as your leader, if you're a leader in that locker room right now, what is your message to this young team. There's a lot of young talent all over. Some of these guys haven't been part of losses like that. What is your message, if you were a leader of this football team, what is your message to these guys this week?
Well, knowing and kind of understanding where the organization is at the moment, I would say to these guys, it is a long year. It is a long year, and the most important thing you can do is every day come in and just keep fighting to get better. It's not walking in the door lackadaisical saying, oh, I'm a Husker player, so I'm on top of the world. I'm just sweet because I'm wearing the uniform. It is walking in the door every day, actively trying to get better.
Yeah, 100% agree. And I think that for me has been one of the hardest parts of being a fan now. When you watch the game as a fan, I watch it, and my wife even said to me after the Ohio State loss, she goes, is this what I have to deal with you from now on after a Husker loss? Like, are you just going to be sad and like upset?
And I'm like, same conversation with my wife.
And I'm just like, it didn't really affect me like this as a player. And I think that's because you had the ability to like go back to work and fix it. Versus now that we're fans, we get to do this all week. We get to sit, we get to digest, we get to watch it again. Where really you're moving on. So let's move on. Let's move to Northwestern.
Well, I want to interject something quickly. I think you and I, being professionals playing in the league a long time, I think we're a little bit more critical because we look at schemes and we know what assignments are. So when things don't get picked up, I think it just jabs at us a little harder because we know what those guys are supposed to be doing. And it's just like, oh, come on.
Is that because we played and we expect such a high level? Do we have to remind ourselves that this is college football? Do we have to step back and be like, okay, these dudes aren't making millions of dollars or whatever it is? Like, I find myself going, that's an unacceptable mistake. But then I go, okay, he's 18 years old. Versus, and we look at it, we look at it much more with fact and logic versus emotional pull. I try not to be super emotional as I watch the game, as hard as it may be. But I think it's because we do expect such excellence on the football field as we watch it.
Yeah, I think it's a slippery slope though. If you start to use the excuse of, oh, these are just kids, well, then you're going to be okay with the mediocre play. I think you got to expect more, but also know that the mistakes are going to happen. Kind of look at it like a coach here.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's how we view it. We view it as coaches. We view it as leaders. I mean, you were a leader on your squad. I'd like to think I was partially a leader on my team. And it's just how we view life. So let's move on. Northwestern, they're coming in here, and they're not scared of Memorial Stadium. They proved it. They walked in here our first year in the Big Ten, and they beat us. Kane Coulter ran all over. The next year we go up to Northwestern. We have to come an 11-point comeback in 2012. And then 2013, I almost died in the dog pile with the Hail Mary throw. So this is a team that's not afraid to come in here because they know they can go toe-to-toe. They're averaging only 15 points a game. Not really sure who's going to be their quarterback. Hunter says he's healthy. Not sure. But what are we expecting, not from Northwestern, what do you see from Big Red coming out of that stadium, coming out of that tunnel on Saturday? Are they looking to make a statement, or do you think there might be a little hangover from last weekend still?
All right, this needs to be a statement week.
Okay.
Now, I generally think after suffering such a demoralizing loss like last week was, it is easy to think that, okay, they're going to come out ready to roll. Those guys in that locker room, that coaching staff needs to make sure that happens, because this is absolutely a statement week saying we are getting things flipped around here, and this is when we're going to show it.
So whose shoulders does that fall on? If you had to pick a guy in the offense besides Adrian, obviously we know this whole offense runs through Adrian, but who has to step up this week? Who has to be that guy that says, Adrian, come to me, or Adrian, give me the ball, or Coach Frost, I want the ball? Who has to be that guy for the Huskers this week?
It is every single upperclassman on that team. Every senior, junior, redshirt, sophomore. I mean, it is everybody who understands what Nebraska football is all about. Every single one of them all week long has to be shouting, this is our week. This is where we are going to prove that we belong to be on the field.
Absolutely. Defensively, we got embarrassed a little bit last week. We got almost 50 points scored on us. We didn't stop the run. We let Justin Fields have whatever he has. Northwestern comes in here, and they're going to want to run the football, obviously. They got Drake at running back, who's a decent player, who can make some things happen on the ground game. What is the game plan this week? Do you think we just got to make them one-dimensional, make them throw the ball? Do you think that we just kind of come out and do our own thing? Or what is the game plan defensively against this Northwestern offensive attack? I mean, they're only averaging 15 points a game, so they're not a high-scoring offense by any means, but they'll make you pay if you give them options.
Right. I will say every defensive coordinator's main objective: take away the run, make them throw it. If you know that they're going to throw it every play, it makes everything easier. So first and foremost, you got to stop the run. Make their guys try to beat you in the air, and then that's when the playmakers have to make plays.
Yeah, so looking on that defense, this linebacking core, I know you say you don't know a ton, but the Huskers, I mean, you got Mo Berry, you got JoJo Doman. These dudes are really, really good players, but I've said this since the beginning. When you have a 3-4 defense, you need that ass kicker off the edge that's going to rush the passer. I don't necessarily know if Nebraska has one of those guys. If you're looking at Nebraska's defense and you're saying, okay, we need to get a sack from this guy, do we have one of those guys, or do you think it's a lot of our pressures of letting them come off scheme and blitzes, which is why I think it hurt us against Ohio State. When we sent the blitzes, we left our corners on islands, which is what happens.
Yeah.
Do you necessarily think we have that guy that's really just going to roll off the edge with base pressure and get a sack?
I will say that I do believe that we have it.
Okay.
It's just whoever that guy is hasn't figured it out yet.
So you think I know I'm stretching here, but like our Von Miller, our whoever, Khalil Mack, I know these are big names, but you think he's on this roster right now and he just hasn't figured it out yet?
I mean, you look at a guy like you, a guy like me, guys that went on to the league when shouldn't have gone in the league, and then played a lot of years in the league when they shouldn't have played in the league. It's because we just figured it out. We figured out how to play the game. There is a defensive end in that locker room, or an outside backer in that locker room, that just hasn't figured out how to be that guy yet. So I don't know what it's going to take, but one of those guys is going to have to dig deep down in his chest and just grab his heart and go, okay, this is my time to just tee it off.
When did that happen for you? Do you remember when it was able just to kind of flip that switch a little bit and be like, man, I have to step up, I have to be better?
Yeah, I knew my freshman year here when I had to take over for an all Big 12 tackle with four games left in the year. I got my tail kicked, and then we were playing Michigan, the Alamo Bowl in 2005, and I'm starting as a 2005. Gosh, I don't even remember that year. But as a true freshman, starting against a senior All Big Ten D end, that is when I knew I had to step it up. And you know what? Zach Taylor got his head knocked off the whole game. But that showed me something.
Right.
That showed me something. And the next year, I was all Big 12. The year after that, I was all Big 12. And the year after that, I was also. And it was just reaching down in myself and saying, it ain't good enough. If I'm going to be here on this field in front of these fans, they deserve more. My quarterback deserves more. And they got more.
And I think that's exactly right. I think that we need to lean on, obviously Khalil Davis, who I think is one of our better guys, is out this week with the suspension for throwing the punch, which I agree with. There's no point. There's no way for that in games. In practice, completely different thing. In a game, you can't do it. In the NFL, they take your money. In college, they just fine you for a game. But I think of a guy like Ben Stille. Been in this program a long time, and he was very emotional after last game. You could see it on his face that one stung. So I'm going to lean on him a lot this week. With Khalil out, I think that Ben Stille is going to have a big game. I think he's the type of guy that we're going to go out there, we're going to see a couple sacks out of some TFLs, and I'm excited to watch him play. On the offensive side of the ball, I want to see Dedrick Mills have a good game. I think he's someone we need to get more out of, because Mo, as electric as he is and as great as he is, he's having some health issues. And so when some guy goes down, it's next man up mentality, and we need them to step up and have a great game. So for your two players, if you have one, those are my two. Who are you looking at this week as two players to really step up and have good games?
Well, I'm always looking at the O-line, so I will give you 5 guys.
I love it.
Those 5 guys need to have the best games of their lives. They need to. They need to take these guys and dominate them off the field. And that is the challenge to them, because to get the running game going, for these running backs to feel comfortable, they may not completely see the holes the way they should yet. So what that means for the O-line, the hole's got to be bigger. The hole can never be big enough. And then take these guys and grind them into the dirt.
Okay, so for me, I want to see a 300-yard rushing game this game. I think that's going to be important. Is that unrealistic? Is that something you think is possible? And I want to see us not turn the ball over. I think those are my two things for this week: is can we rush the ball for 300, and can we take care of the football? Because when we take care of the football, we're a damn good offense. But when we turn the ball over, you get yourself behind, you really make yourself, like you said, one-dimensional. If you're down 2-3 scores, you got to throw the ball. You can't do the running. So I want to see 300 yards rushing. I want to see no turnovers. What do you want to see as a collective all-around for the Huskers this weekend?
Well, I think those numbers are exciting numbers, and if they get reached, more power to them, because that would be awesome. Like I said, every week I just watch the O-line play, so I just want to see the dominant physicality, because these guys are big enough and good enough. Even the freshman in the middle is good enough to do it. They just have to realize it, that they can grab a guy and just start throwing him. Put him into the dirt. You know, if you get a yellow flag, I know it happens, whatever, move on. Do it again. They aren't going to throw a flag on every play, you hope, right?
You hope. That's the hope. You hope they're not going to catch every single one. They might. So as we're wrapping up here, I'm going to put a score prediction out. I want you to do the same. I think Nebraska rolls this weekend. Northwestern's coming in here a little beat up. I think that we're going to come out really pissed off, as we should after last week. I think we're going to come out with an attitude. I think Nebraska puts up 52 points this week. I really do. I think Nebraska can put up, if we don't turn the ball over, I think we can put up 52 points, and I think we can keep them under 20. I really do. I think we can see that kind of game from this team, but vice versa, it can be the flip reverse. It really can, depending which Husker teams show up. But I think the Huskers show up ready to roll 52-18, or let's call it 17. Yeah. I'll go 52-17. What are your thoughts?
Okay, well,
I know, it's a stretch.
Your goals are way
lofty goals.
I love it. Now, understanding as aggressive as our defense is, and how much they do blitz, you know, eventually you're going to get caught. So I would like to see us win by at least two scores. So I would love to see the 35-21. At the least, I would absolutely love the 42-21 score.
Awesome. Well, that's gonna do it for us here from the Railyard. Matt, thank you so much for coming out. I will be live again on Monday night, 6 to 7 p.m. for Just My Opinion. This week's guest, I have Jordan Westerkamp, the hero of the 2013 Northwestern game, where I saved his life because they dogpiled on me and not him. And so please stop by, join the show. If you missed it here, if you're showing up late, it'll be all up on my YouTube page. But come down, me and Matt are going to hang out here in the Railyard for another 20-30 minutes, hang out with you guys, sign some autographs. So go Big